Okay, so let's start. The time comes and we should start. So Leo, recording is working. Amazing. So, ladies and gents, so today's meeting or today's meetup is about the hacking games. Think like a hacker. We are going to hear from three different people, each one of them wore that at some point in his life or still wearing that in his life. We will start with Shai Chen, the CEO of Pipl Security. Shai has quite a, how do you say it? Mileage, not kilometers. Oh, that's weird. Quite a mileage in the industry.
Say old.
And he's going to show us some trends in AppSec. Later on, we'll move to one of the researchers in Pentera. Yuval Rabinowitz is going to speak about calculating CVE reputation. All those numbers, all those weird things that, is critical, still really critical. The numbers, does they mean anything to our organizations, etc. And we'll close up with the Rotten Bar, not to mix with the Rotten Bar from the podcast, the guy that works in BDO and then the OT and things like this. This is the other famous Rotten Bar from used to be Cider, now part of Palo Alto. Rotem is going to tell us a bit about bug bounty and how to basically, or what does it mean to have a bug bounty program? What does it mean, or what's the difference? I remember when we discussed it before, we discussed the difference between bug bounty and in general PT or hacking. Where those lines, or what are the lines between them, or what are the lines that connect them? I remember speaking about, well, the innovate, probably the motivation is cost or something else. Direct cost for findings or the cost of fixed fines for doing such services, etc. I'm pretty sure it's going to be really, really fun. So without further ado, Shai, let's start with you. I'll allow you to share your screen because you have some demos as well. So just share your screen and I'll stop mine the moment you say you're ready.
Sure. You just need to give us the participants the option to share our screens because the permission code isn't enabled.
That's way too much.
No, that's
it. You have it? No? Leo, maybe it's on you.
Yeah, I think I got the permission now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much, Gidi, for the introduction. I want to start with an apology. The guy in the picture in the invite looks nothing like me. It's because I got lazy and I sent an image. I didn't send an image. Leo took an image from like 20 years ago. This guy was, in a better shape, unfortunately. Anyway.
That's what happened when you don't send the picture.
Yeah, I had to correlate the old age with the image. That just doesn't make sense, right? So I already got introduced. I'm Shai. I'm in this field for about 19 years, and I'm going to present a presentation that aims to give you guys a couple of trends, tools, and methodologies to spice up your penetration tests. Okay, more accurately, your application penetration tests in different models, whether it's a targeted application pen test, whether it's a bug bounty, and even whether it's a red team against an organization. I'm not going to teach anyone how to do SQL injections and reflections. I'm not going to talk about new attacks, none of that. I'm going to talk about tools that really, really help out the process of finding issues in generally any target, an organization, an application, a technology, etc. Okay? So
Shai, a couple of things. One asks that you will talk slower. Again, Shai doesn't have much time and he wants to manage it in time. And second, get into a presentation mode.
Sure. Presentation mode would be not that useful, but I'll do that because I'm going to switch on and off.
People will actually see the task. No problem.
Yeah,
excellent.
No, sure, no problem. And regarding the speed, I'll try. That's that's structural. I'll do my best. Okay. So
move the meetup to multiply by 0.5 if you can.
I'll do that. So the couple of things that we're going to aim to. I'm going to give you a couple of tools that will make it easier to target the app that you're testing, either by bypassing some mechanisms or just picking another instance that's way easier to test than the instance that you were given or you intended to test. I'm going to teach you a couple of cheats. That's how I treat it. It's a couple of cheats to get data that's relevant for the app that will help you during the assessment process, like the code of the application or credentials of users that were not given to you if you're doing a red team, or other tools that can get you more content in the application that you wouldn't have found otherwise, okay? So it's generally tools and methods to make the process easier, to give it a couple of cheats, and to make it, you know, spicier by giving you secret information normally not available, okay? So again, some of these things might be new to some of you, some of them are not. When they're unified into a unified testing methodology, I've been testing it for the past 6 years and adding some components and tools into it. It's really, really effective compared to the typical attack and pen. You're just trying to hack an application without all that background information. How much more useful? You know, you can find other applications in the system that were simply not available, and through those systems find vulnerabilities or APIs that were dormant and hack those. You can find instances of a server that doesn't have the WAF, well, like the normal production system, and it's a one-to-one exact replica. You can bypass a lot of mechanisms and get a lot of systems through this method and tools that can generally assist you during the task at hand, okay? So the logic behind the philosophy is simple. If you're a CISO, and I'm not one of this, you know, I'm not associated with the school that thinks people are dumb. No, I think these days in 2023, we have a lot of professionals out there. They're generally doing their job well. They make mistakes like anyone else, but when they have a system at focus, there's like the main application of the bank, okay? Or the main application of the startup or whatever it is, it's generally in a decent condition, at least eventually in its lifespan. The thing that's not in good condition, it's the components that the organization is simply not aware of. They don't know they exist. It's theirs, but they don't know they exist. And over the past couple of years, we've been doing a lot of red team exercises, red team, external red team, like giving you the organization gives us the name, nothing else, just the name. We identify the assets of the organization. We figure out what assets the organization has. We found all relevant information to those assets, and then we breach. In most cases, the organization are not aware of more than 30% of their assets, which is a crazy number if you think about organizations that have tens of thousands of assets. Sometimes you find hundreds and sometimes thousands of assets that the organization is not aware of. And for those assets, they can be replicas of the applications that they are aware of. They can be dev or test instances. They can be the internal components, like the backend components of the front-end application that are supposed to be exposed, which were exposed to the internet by mistake. They can be dormant IPs and dormant applications. They can be applications on the server that was exposed that the organization was simply not aware of. And they can even be APIs that were dormant or test or dev APIs that were exposed. What we're going to talk about are generally the techniques, methods, and tools used to identify all of those. Unmonitored assets, unmonitored APIs, unmonitored parameters, unmonitored features in applications that are publicly exposed. Now, there's a reason for all that. The reason for the existence, as I mentioned, is not lack of proficiency. It's typically being naive and being unaware. It's really, really hard to track an inventory for an organization. It's really rare for any organization these days to get to a 95%, awareness of its assets. Assets can be cloud accounts. It can be GitHub accounts, GitHub repositories. It can be servers, IPs. It can be, a wide variety of components that are associated or owned by the organization. And the impacts of not knowing about those organizations vary. Sometimes attackers can identify keys and code that are out there which are associated to organization and then abuse them because the organization was not aware of a simple developer that deployed it on the cloud. Sometimes it can be a server with very specific vulnerabilities. And when somebody identifies the vulnerability, the server was not monitored. There wasn't any IDS or IPS or WAF or any protection mechanism on top of it. So it was really easy for the attacker to exploit that unmonitored IP or replica and attack through that. Okay, so the implications of vulnerabilities on unmonitored assets, application IPs, etc., they vary depending on what was found. The impact is typically severe, okay? Because it's much, much easier to find high-impact vulnerabilities that could be sufficiently exploited on those unmonitored assets. Now, I'm going to go over the methodology real quick because I want to show you a couple of tools and I want them to fit into a mold, a context. I'm going to talk about methods to discover, as I mentioned, unmonitored assets. Generally, IPs, dev test staging instances, applications which are dormant or secret, like a secret admin application on the same server in which you have your target application, and a bunch of forgotten assets inside an application, which can be pages, APIs, secret methods, and other functionalities, okay? All those are our targets. That's what I'm trying to achieve, okay? And we're gonna get to that. We're going to get to that by finding those unmonitored IPs, replicas, and systems to the toolsets that we have, okay? So to get those elements, we have to go through a couple of phases, okay? First, we have to know what to search. And to figure out what we have to search, sorry for that. To figure out what we have to search, ideally we want search tokens. I'll explain and later demonstrate. When we're testing, for example, a specific application, the trademarks the application may have, it may be the domain name, like the application is hosted on bank.com. That's the domain name. It's probably, so it has an application, it's called bank.com. But there's other unique identifiers I can use to find data relevant to the application and even alternative replicas of the application. Some of those elements may be a unique certificate or an element in the certificate, the SSL certificate. Other elements can be the title. It can be a very specific favicon or logo. It can even be a very specific subset of the HTML, which is unique. And I can take those subsets, once I know how to identify unique subsets, and run those subsets in GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, search engines, and get a ton of data relevant to the application. I've had, I won't say numerous, but at least dozen of instances where I found the actual code of the application with test data on Docker Hub. I just downloaded the same application I was testing from Docker Hub because taking the signatures enabled me to search and find that the container used for development was uploaded as is to Docker Hub. How much easier would it be to do a pen test or bug bounty approach when you had all the code, test data, and the live instance of the system at your disposal, instead of just doing a black box or gray box in front of, a remote instance, okay? So getting search tokens organization requires you to analyze the HTML content of the application, the certificate, the organization, the brand names, and a couple of other things which are relevant to the application itself. Once you have search tokens, generally elements you can search on the distinct application, you can run those search tokens in a couple of ways. A, you can find subdomains and domains that are associated to those tokens. Like, for example, if it's bank.com and the name of the bank is Bank of Country, you can run subdomains with similarity to find subdomains associated to it. You can find IPs that match those signatures by searching in IP databases or response databases, and I'll get to that. You can find accounts associated to all those search tokens, etc., etc. You can also run all those search tokens in code and container repositories or in credential repositories. For example, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, etc., or credential repositories. At the end of that process, you will find assets which are either replicas of the applications, unprotected replicas, dev, test instances, or if your target is not necessarily an application, you're testing an organization, you would see a ton of applications that match those signatures, which you will be able to verify are owned by the organization and are, in fact, an unprotected or unmonitored entry point into the organization, which has, I don't know, 10% of the protections that the main applications of the organization will have. Then you'll be able to run a couple of additional processes, which we'll get to in the end, primarily search patterns and fuzzing techniques to find additional applications and additional entry points to tackle the application. At the end of this process, you will get to the good old pen testing phase, much, much more equipped than you were before. Okay? Much, much more equipped than you were before. And, you know, I won't say it will be necessarily easy, but you'll have a better starting position than just starting to tackle your application than you would have before. Okay? So a couple of tools we use on a regular basis just to spice up, and I'll start showing those. It's really useful as a tester that uses this methodology because you'll be blocked a lot, okay? A lot, to use a VPN for a couple of reasons. A, we found that some dev test instances that you identify are only accessible from the origin country. So let's say you're testing a server in Canada and you found an admin server. If you'll try and access it, sometimes you'll get a bland response or no response at all. If you simply switch a country to a specific, to the specific target country, somehow you'll get access to the interface. You'll be able to test it and abuse it. It's really useful if you found internal assets or backend components associated with your application, or Rev or Dev or test replica. Just using a VPN is key. I typically use NordVPN and ExpressVPN. There's a bunch of other services out there. It doesn't really matter. Really useful for once you found the IP, just to access that relevant asset. Content replicas, I think that's the start. That's the start. The best thing I can do is, start the demo and stop talking and show you what I mean. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is talk about search token and show you what I mean. I'll be using a ton of services to identify search tokens. But generally, I'll be trying to identify organization brand names and alternative names, application brand names and alternative names, domain, subdomains associated with specific application, unique signatures in the application certificate in various fields, the CN, the O, the registrant email, favicon, icon, and even images in the application and their hashes. That's not necessarily a big deal. The other ones are probably bigger, and search by title and content, which is pretty big, okay? And I'll be using a couple of tools here. In terms of domain, subdomain numeration, let's say we have an organization. Let's say we have Verizon.com, okay? So doing the subdomain numeration for Verizon will already give me a couple of search tokens, okay? I'm going to use DNS Dumpster for my presentation. There's a ton of tools out there. It's a good one. I'll be using two, okay? So getting assets of Verizon, pretty easy. You run DNS Dumpster or DigDAO or whatever you want, whatever subdomain numeration tools you have, you can find tools. You can even find replicas of specific applications. For example, if I'll take a specific Verizon application or Microsoft application, doesn't matter, like let's say login Microsoft.com. Let's use login Microsoft.com. I can sometimes get replicas like dev and test replicas under Microsoft.com. Okay, so sometimes I'll see login Microsoft.com and then dev login Microsoft.com and then test like login Microsoft.com. So just the subdomain enumeration can give me replicas. I can also search for other names for the same servers. Okay, and that can give me alternate names. Okay, alternate, it's a feature, it's a very simple feature in DNS Dumper. It can give me alternate names of the same application. Okay, but then I can also do a deeper process. So I'm presenting to you another tool. It's called Pentest Tools. It's a fantastic tools. Again, there's competitors. I'm not advocating one tool or the other. It's just a useful feature. And they have a feature called Find Domains. Okay, let's see if I can actually find it. Okay, so what you do there, let's say I'm entering Verizon here. So what it will do, it will go to the certificate repository and a couple of other repositories, and it will try and find organizations owned by Verizon's or alternative names of Verizon-owned organizations. It will generally find alternate names and subsidiaries. So let's say there's a company that Verizon or Microsoft or whoever bought. It's very likely that I'll see the company name in the list. So I will be able to identify alternate names and alternative names for that. It will be useful because I can identify other domains which are associated with Verizon. For example, Verizon Dev or Verizon Labs. And maybe the replicas that will help me out in the pen test will be under those domains. Okay? So I'll be able to, one way to identify assets is subdomain enumeration, domain association, and then again, subdomain enumeration to identify those assets. I'm running those, I'll run that in the background. Verizon is a big organization, so I'm not sure it's going to be completed by the end of the presentation, but we'll get back to it. But as a general rule, finding assets, domains, subdomains, that will be the initial search tokens. Because let's say there's a specific application here that's relevant for me, okay? The name of the domain is a search token. I can search it in GitHub. I can search it in GitLab. I can search it in index repository. Just the name of the domain that's interesting for me is a search token, but it's not the only one, okay? There's other search tokens that I can use, which is a good time for us to introduce another tool sets in our, Swiss Army knife, okay? And that's response databases. There's a couple of names for that. I'm not sure response databases is the right term. For example, Shodan calls itself computer search database, okay? Or computer search engine. There's a bunch of names for the category, okay? So I'm going to present a couple, okay? Let's take, Giddy, you want to participate? Or about some interaction? Want to throw an organization that's interesting to you? Anything.
Yeah, anything that you want.
No, really, just anything that interests to the audience.
Something small enough or something decent?
Whatever you want.
Try a cider. What do you think? No, I doubt that
else?
cider is still exists.
Cider like
Right?
that?
I mean, the website.
No, cider
I guess it,
Cider with Y, right? Not I. Oh, is that right? Why? Cider like that?
we are cider. We were cider dash security. CIDER.
and it's CI. Yeah.
Yeah, with a CI.
Cider
So
security.
something.
Oh man, you're not very famous. I think Palo Alto cannot.
Palo Alto is
Offline.
now it's even more famous than before.
Does it?
We have.
Give me anything something that exists, like literally anything. I can try one if you want. I can go back to Verizon if you prefer. No, until somebody is really interesting in some asset, let's go for Verizon, okay? There's a bunch of stuff there. The searches will be longer, but they will be interesting, that's for sure, okay? So what I'm saying is there's a couple of tools I'm presenting. I'm presenting 4. I'm not sure all of them are in the presentation. I'm presenting Census, okay? I'm presenting Shodan, I'm presenting LinkIX, I'm presenting FOFA. It doesn't really matter. Some of them are better than others in some aspects. Some of them are better than others in some zones. For example, I'm typically using Zoomai a lot these days in Census, and I had an instance where both of these, the cycle of IP recognition they're going through, didn't identify a publicly exposed RDP, but Shodan did. But in most cases, it's the other way around. Shodan doesn't have the assets and the other ones do. For example, Verizon.com has 2,200, 500 assets documented. You'll run that in Shodan, Verizon.com. You'll get results, definitely, but you'll get less, like 52 results documented, drastically less. So some of the services have more results than others. Some of them surprise you sometimes, even though they don't have all the results, they're better at some, some areas, okay? But I'll take the approach. So I can search for organization signatures by analyzing the SSL certificate. So the SSL certificate will have a couple of fields that isn't interesting for me. There will be the CN field, there will be the O field, which is the organization name, and there will be the registrant. Sometimes there's a registrant, like an email, okay? I can use syntax in all those engines to search for those specific elements. For example, I can search SSL, Verizon, and space. And note the number here. You see 2,400? Look at the number now. Okay? It will be way more. And I can narrow the search down to something that's actually organization equals Verizon. Okay? And that will give me a much, much more accurate results. But you can see all those are Verizon IPs. They don't even have a domain name associated to them. There's no domain name. It's a rogue IP. There's a bazillion of those, okay? Which is directly exposed to the internet. And I can get to that now, okay? So one search organization is elements of the certificate. It can be the CN. It can be a very specific field like O. It can be whatever you want. Other elements can be inside the content. For example, title, okay? Or I can take a specific title and search by the title. Okay, like let's say I have a very specific title to my application, like Verizon Super Admin Application. I can search for very specific instances of Verizon super admin application. I don't know if there's an actual, I'm just trying it. Hey, what do you know? Okay. There is a title called Verizon admin, and we're seeing it, and there's one. See that? I swear to God, that's like a random one, okay? But you can actually search for alternate instances or special instances associated to your application, okay? It can be a management console. It can be anything, as long as you search the various elements relevant to it. Now, when you're doing a bug bounty for an organization, for example, you can get to the super secret admin applications of that organization through that syntax, as long as they're documented in those services. And you can do something similar in Census. For example, I can search for hosts in Census, okay? I can do the same in, in Shodan. Then I can do those searches and syntaxes in the other tool sets. Eventually, I'll be finding a bunch of assets, IPs, servers, accounts, SaaS services, etc., associated to the search signatures that I have. Usefulness, if I'm targeting organization, I can find targets associated to organization through those search signatures. Other benefits, let's say I'm testing a very specific application. I've had numerous occasions of searching something unique in its certificate or even the domain name and finding IPs that don't have a domain name associated, which will test or dev or even internal components of the same application, which I can now target, okay? So those search services, those server databases or computer search engines, call it what you wish, enable me to get other targets associated to my organization, application, bug bounty target, etc. Okay, just by running the search elements I wanted in those search services. Generally, names, CN names, brand names, titles, etc. Okay, and eventually, after I got all the search engines, I can start to wrap up the targets that I get, like acquire the relevant targets that I need in terms of servers, IPs, accounts, etc., etc. So I recommended 3, but there's obviously there are more. There's Shodan, LeakIX, Census, Zuma. I think there's at least 6 more that you can use, and we use them to with the search queries, the search tokens of organization name, subdomain, certificate title, favicon hash, etc., to gather up the targets. Okay, just for those of you who are not aware, you can actually take the hash of the favicon, and there's specific syntax to search by the icon hash. Okay, it's not common to find something that's relevant, but sometimes you do. So it's another tool in the that you can use. So once we found those servers or assets or cloud SaaS accounts that are associated to the organization, we can start to narrow down the search and find for relevant information to that target application. So let's say we found our target. Maybe we have the target in advance because the engagement is, hey, you need to pentest app.bank.com. That's it. So we found dev replicas of it and test replicas of it, maybe even, if we got lucky, an internal backend service that serves the same server, okay? That's pretty much what we can find in the context of an application pen test. If it's a bug bounty or a red team engagement, we can find 200 applications or 5,000 applications of that organization. Now we can get more data relevant for either the organization or the application in end using the same search tokens. Again, we isolated the organization name. We isolated the application name. We isolated the certificate. We isolated domain names. All those search tokens can now be used to gather more information. Which information? Let's start. A, code, keys, credentials, and secret URLs in the application. All those are elements you can get. B, live containers with actual test data of the application that we're testing or the organization that we're testing, okay? C, employee or user credentials for that application, okay? Or at least usernames, which we can then use in a brute force attempt or password spraying attempt. D, documentation. Sometimes that's useful, okay? So, for example, I had a customer, which is, it's a multi-mate customer, and it had a system, and I found a documentation of a replica of the system, and that documentation had internal URLs, and the internal URLs had a critical vulnerability. So finding the documentation was still useful, and I couldn't find it if I didn't use the hash of the icon. I got to the documentation by using the hash of the icon. Okay, so again, the search tokens bring us all those elements. And last but not least, replicas. Okay, I can still find replicas through those search tokens. Okay, and that's another spice up for that. It can be like an IP or a lab, or maybe even another instance of the same application in another customer, if it's a shelf product. Sometimes we are assigned with testing shelf products. So finding a shelf product can get us additional information, which was indexed only for that shelf product in another customer. And then we can use that data for our instance. So it's vogue. I'm giving you examples. It's not everything you can get, but those search tokens can give us a lot. Okay, so let's go for the obvious thing. Let's go for, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, all those, to give you a couple of examples. Okay, so let's go to GitHub, as an example. So in GitHub, I can search for those search tokens that I found. So let's say I figured out that the Verizon application is written in Java, and the name of the application is A, B, and C. Okay, I can search for that data in GitHub with very specific pattern. For example, if the application is written in Java, I can search for all the Java code associated to Verizon in GitHub. For example, import, that's a Java search pattern. There's a bunch of those. Import com.verizon. That's it. That's my search token. So that's repositories that import from com.verizon. Then if there are such repositories, let's see, maybe they're not strong on the Java part. Let's try Microsoft. If I'm getting none here, then I'm not authenticated. Okay, I'm getting stuff here. I'm just not signed in for some reason. Weird. Okay, so guys, didn't expect that. Should have been logged in. I'm not going to do recovery right now. I think I know what the problem is. Yep, sorry. Sorry, guys.
In the meantime, you have 7 more minutes.
Well, I'll start running.
And not trying to push or anything.
Yeah, I know. Didn't you finish 5 minutes earlier? I think you did.
Yeah,
Maybe that's still a minute or two.
no problem.
Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to give you a search pattern. For example, those codes like import.com.microsoft.com will suggest that this is a library that is using at least something for Microsoft. I can use package, which is meaning this code is by Microsoft in Java. It's a package that's written for Microsoft, com.microsoft.com, that's a convention, which is of Microsoft. Now I can use the same for Microsoft.the application name to make the search more distinct. Okay, for example, Microsoft.z3. If my application name is Z3, I can find code relevant for Z3. If there's some third-party developer or developer that got sloppy, I'll be able to find the code of the application I'm testing, or these fragments of it. Now, the conventions change from technology for technology. For example, for .NET, it will be using, and the naming convention will be different. And for Ruby, it will be different, and so on and so on. But searching for code convention relevant for the application, the organization, and the technology I'm testing can get me the code. Same thing applies for containers. Let's say I'm going for Docker Hub, okay? And in Docker Hub, I can actually search for containers relevant for a specific application or an organization, for example, Verizon, okay? And if I have the name of the application, maybe, whatever it is. So there's a couple of images by Verizon Digital, but sometimes you'll find somebody, sometimes a developer like Karen 20 year, that uploaded something for Verizon, like Verizon Rabbit. Maybe that's a system that I'm testing and it's relevant for me, but it's not supposed to be exposed. It was exposed by mistake. And using those search tokens will get me to that extra information I need for my assessment, okay? So again, repositories of code, repositories of container, etc., etc., etc. Finally, I can also search for accounts relevant for my target. Okay, I have the search tokens. Those are typically domain names at least. And if I have the domain names, I can search for credentials. There's a bunch of credential repositories. I'm not going to go to the typical ones like Pastebin, etc. I'm going to go to a dedicated one just to present what I want. So let's say I'm going to Intelix, which is Intelligence X. It's one vendor. Again, I'm not advocating a specific tool. But if I'll search for Verizon accounts, because I found a Verizon admin application, I have like at least 70, 60, text files. At least some of them are credential leaked text files, and those are Verizon accounts. Some of those accounts might work on the secret admin interface I found. Some of them might give me emails or usernames or whatever, or phone numbers that I can use for the process I'm trying to achieve or trying to attack. Okay, so again, more information. I'm using the search tokens here. It can be a domain name. It can be just the name. Doesn't have to be a domain name like Verizon. It can be something else. Okay, like through that I can get additional accounts that I can use for my assessment process. Okay, so eventually I'll have assets. I'll have information of the assets in the form of code, credentials, secret URLs, links, everything I found in the repositories, and maybe even credentials. Okay, now it's the phase of identifying additional elements inside the application. Secret applications, secret endpoints, secret features, caches. So I'm going to use a couple of techniques. I'll start with the easy ones. A, cached content. Those of you who are pen testers, you were probably taught about Google hacking a bazillion times ago, years ago. It's not new. You take the URL of the application. For example, I'm using Tech API Pro. It's one application. You can say, give me all the JSP files that Google knows about Tech API. And you'll get a bunch of JSP files that Google indexed. And you can do the same in Bing, and you'll get stuff in Bing, which is typically different. Eventually, you'll get some assets. Others, we can go to Wayback Machine and you'll see other instances of the website, and maybe you can scrap stuff from there. I want to show you something pretty useful that not many people know, okay? It's not secret by any means, but it's really useful. Once I have my application, or even the replica of the application, sometimes my target application is brand new and it wasn't indexed, but a replica of that was indexed. Taking the domain name of my applications or of its replicas, it's worked using all of those, will give me a ton of URLs that were indexed in Wayback Machine for that application over the years, okay? Over the years. And it can be a ton of URLs, really, genuinely ton of URLs. For example, login.microsoft.com. This plugin, Wayback Machine in Burpsuit, will go to that domain name historically since 1999 and take all the URLs that Wayback Machine knows of on that assets and give you unified presentations of all the URLs there, okay? A ton of URLs starting from 1999 to today, which you can get for a target that you have, for its replicas, and even for similar systems. And that's a very good baseline, okay? You can know of every publicly exposed a URL, even if it was exposed for a day, as long as it was indexed in Wayback, and you can get it all in one wrap-up. Pretty useful for the initial batch, okay? You do that, you run those in a fuzzing dictionary, you'll get default old obsolete entry points, and sometimes even administrative applications or features, okay? Just by doing that. Second element we want to talk about is fuzzing, okay? It's not new, many pen testers use it, but once you have all the information in search tokens, you can create your own dedicated, unique fuzzing list. You can create it yourself, you can wrap it up, you can create something useful for the technology. For those of you who don't know about the repository, I really, really recommend SecList. It's a repository on Google, on GitHub. It has a ton of technology-specific fuzzing dictionaries. Okay, I use customized versions of that, but each one of you can customize it. There's stuff for Java, for .NET, for many, many technologies. And running those with the customizations and search tokens we had earlier can identify a ton of resources, which are, secret entry points, etc., etc. For the demo I prepared in advance, just a sec. For the demo I prepared in advance, I used, Burpsuit Intruder. just get to it. I use Burp Suite Intruder, nothing special about it. You take an application in Burp Suite, you set up an intruder session and you run it, and eventually you'll get secret files, secret directories, secret everything you want. And if you spice it up with, the data from earlier, like if you found the source code repository and you add names from the source code repositories, like directory names and code names, you'll get additional directories and additional applications. Okay, and you can fuzz the directory name, you can fuzz the file name. So I guess the only thing important here, you got all this information. It's important to make use of it. Some of the uses is finding additional applications just by fuzzing and identifying them. And some of the uses in finding additional entry point. For obsolete technologies, I'm not sure obsolete is correct word, but old school technologies, SP, JSP, PHP, etc. It's really important to fuzz for file names with known extensions like JSP, PHP, SPX, SMX, whatever is relevant for the technology. Okay. Some technologies should have a pretty straightforward fuzzing sequence if you want to identify those secret applications. For example, in .NET, ASP.NET, MVC, .NET HVC, .NET Core, I would typically do a tech fingerprint to figure out what's the technology. If I would do a fuzzing for SMX, SPX, SHX, the typical technology extensions, okay? Then I would spice it up with exploits that get me additional content. For example, in .NET, there's short name scanner exploit, which gets you additional information. And then you can run short name scanner on the root URL and on sub URLs, etc., etc. So that's an example. We don't have enough time to explain it, but the short version is you have a technology. Our aim before we start the pen test is to identify additional targets, additional URLs, additional applications. You can use an exploit which is relevant to the technology to do just that. Okay, so short name scan, fantastic for .NET. Java has its own merits and PHP has its own merits, etc., etc. Running CGIs, dictionaries from seglists like Microsoft CGIs, Java CGIs, etc., specific to technologies will give you further information. Okay, and the process goes on. So each technology would have its own fuzzing dictionary. It will have its own exploits to gather additional information. And at the end of that process, I would have a bunch of URLs that are relevant to the application, which brings us to the final phase. Okay, and how am I going to do it? I have a minute or two.
Yeah, 1 or 2 minutes, and then the 2 questions
okay.
that have been raised.
Okay. So at the end of the process, we found IPs, replicas, etc. We found a code relevant to them. We found credential relevant to them, to those search engines. We populated all that into Burp Suite or Zap or whatever tool you're using, and then we fuzzed for additional entry points. Our interception proxy will now be filled with a ton of data that's relevant to the application. We're not through yet. We can still search for additional content. We can do that by analyzing the HTML. Burp Suite does some of it on its own, but I found it's nowhere close to what you can get if you do something manual. And I recommend either Zap search or Burp search while using conventions and extensions and search tokens that you found previously. Okay, so if it's a .NET application, I'll search for SPX pages in the responses of the application. And I'll find, I promise you, a ton of secret SPX, SMX, SHX pages relevant to the application, because I have all this content, which is secret, which I analyzed and documented. And now I'm doing those searches, and I'll find furthermore if I'll analyze it further. I can do the same for the typical search tokens we have. Like, for example, I can search for patterns from the code I found in GitHub. Okay, I can search for elements, and eventually all those mix and matches searches will get me additional content. And after getting all that additional content and on replicas, which are less protected of my target application, then I can go and start my good old pen testing routine. I will start it with in a much better position. I'll have unprotected replicas. I'll have secret URLs. I'll have, code. I'll have credentials, and my results will be, in the same proportion. Okay, that's it. Questions, anyone?
Yes, so there are a couple of questions. So Victor asked for 2 questions. One, I think it was from the beginning of your presentation. What about IP whitelisting bypassing? Any recommendations there for recon?
Yeah, so for a specific IP, I don't have good recommendations except hacking a server that's, would enable you. You can use attacks like if, let's say, there's a system and it has SSRF vulnerability, and you're targeting another system and they're correlated. Maybe the IP of one system can enable you, and the vulnerability in it can enable you to bypass the IP restriction by using SSRF from one system to another. But it's really situational. What I'm proposing here is something much simpler. It's very often enough simply country IP restriction. It's often the case. Just use a VPN, use another country, that's in parallel or in proximity to the target. For example, sometimes the US assets and Canadian assets, I used just use Canadian IPs. It was good enough. Okay, or you can find other offices, and sometimes that's enough. And see what the offices of that organization is. Use a country from that, where the office is at, and you can bypass the IP restriction. Next question.
So the next one, okay, I see two more questions from Victor. And then the next one is, I'm not sure what tool was used, but how does AMAS compare for enumeration to what was presented? I don't recall when.
Can you present the question? I mean, AMAS, maybe Victor.
Yeah, but you can see it in the Q&A section as well. But
see,
and Victor, if you have something to add in text in the chat or in the Q&A section, feel free to add.
I don't know. I'm not using AMAS, so I don't know how to compare it, to be honest.
AMAS is a manual testing. You can fuzz subdomains and domains and DNS and whatever. It does it fast and good, but it's not a service.
So my approach is, I tried a couple of engines. I use 4 for subdomain enumeration, and they always surprise me. It always surprised me how much they complete each other. So I use, one, I use a DNS Dumpster, Pentest Tools, a very specific Palestinian website, which is pretty good, and another one, okay? It doesn't really matter. I merge the results from all of those, and I get pretty interesting results, And they complete each other, and no tool can generally give you everything.
Excellent. So last question, and then we must run to the next one, to Yuval, that is, anxiously waiting to present as well. So Victor asks another one. Is there a checklist you have or would recommend when using BS to check for outside of what BS identifies automatically?
Checklist you have to recommend checking. I don't know what, BS as acronym.
I would say bullshit, but again,
what's BS? Burp Suite.
Burp Suite, okay.
Okay, I would say that Burp Suite.
Never saw it as a short one. Okay.
I really like Burp Suite. It's my kind of favorite tool these days, obviously, like everyone's favorite. I really don't think Burp Suite finds a lot automatically at all. I would highly, highly recommend to avoid using the Discover content exclusively. You can use the Burp Suite Discover content exclusively, but doing fuzzing manually would get you way better results. Okay, the more you do it, the more will become experienced in doing it. Just fuzz for directories and files and subdirectories and files inside those subdirectories. Over time, you'll see a big difference in what you find compared to what Burp Suite finds on its own, unattended. Okay. Any other questions?
I think that's pretty much sums it up. Again, there is another one, but we'll wait it for later because we need to rush.
Okay.
Okay. So, Yuval, now the stage is yours. Let me quickly share my screen again, so everyone will be able to see your presentation and give you remote control over it. You should have it as well. If you are not familiar with Yuval, or first of all, if you're not familiar with Pentera, please log into their website. There is also a blog that you should definitely register for the newsletter. Daniel can put it in the chat. And if you're not familiar with Yuval, he just ran away from an escape room and came directly to Pentera to speak about the CV reputation and how to calculate it. Or basically, what does it mean, all those things.
Yeah,
Yuval, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Gidi. The presentation is called How to Calculate CV Reputation. I'm actually going to talk about automating, part of your security research prioritization. So yeah, I'm a security researcher at Pentera. The presentation is made by me, ChatGPT, and Midjourney because I'm paying $30 a month for those stuff, and I'm gonna make the most out of them. So we'll start with a little bit about me. Went too far. 25 years old. I live in Ramat Gan in Israel with my girlfriend. As you said, my technology journey started out by tinkering with electronics from AliExpress with Arduinos. That got me to build an escape room when I finished high school. I was finishing my Bachelor of Science degree in computer science and got to have a year of building escape rooms, which was amazing. After that, I joined the Army. For about 5 years, I was doing Windows forensics, mainly incident response, building Python tools for incident response, extremely interesting. And then I got to Pentera. I'm in Pentera for about 2 years now. Started out as a cybersecurity researcher and actually lied a little bit at the start because now I'm a backend developer for a couple of months. Had to have a break from all of the cyber. But yeah, Pentera is a company that has a philosophy that's very much like the motto of this webinar. It thinks like a hacker. We have a platform for automating attacks that simulate a hacker, an external hacker and an internal hacker, and it validates your security measures in your company. So basically the thing that's in common for most of the attacks that we can automate, that anyone can perform, is that they're all based on a CV, on a certain vulnerability that someone's trying to exploit. So just what a CV is, I'm sure most of you guys know, but just a brief common vulnerabilities and exposures. It's a structure that was formed by the NIST NVD database. It's just a structure that contains a prefix, a year, and the number for the vulnerability. And that's basically all you need to know for what a CV is. Every CV represents a vulnerability that was found and categorized and indexed into a database by NIST. So let's talk about the problem. When I was in the cybersecurity research team, we had a task. We kept getting tasks of finding the next CV to research and enter the automation of the CV attack into the product. And that's hard because there's a lot of CVs out there. Manually looking up CVs is extremely hard. The world is constantly changing. The CV types are constantly changing, and it's really time consuming for people. The man hours are really expensive. You have to have a skilled person on it. And there's a lot of room for human error because you can always miss important CVs. You can always miss, it's finding a needle in a haystack kind of thing. And you keep getting bombarded by a ton of CVs. That's how Midjourney drew a cybersecurity researcher getting piled up by a bunch of CVs, trying to find the right one. And the sign up, it's actually me. I told it to draw a cybersecurity researcher, and as you can see, it's really creepy. It's me. So yeah, what happens when we have a lot of work to do? We get really lazy. And as security researchers, when we become lazy, we got a Python script to do all of the work for us. So just to say it all again, we need to find the good CVs to research next. And there are a lot of CVs out there. So let's try to be lazy and create a Python script to help us doing that. So we're going to talk about how we started with a small script and ended up with a system that's still being used to this day by the product team to stay ahead in the cyber world, stay ahead of the hackers. We'll talk about successes, immediate successes that the system gave us, and we'll see how we can improve it in the future. So as you can all think about, there are plenty of automation challenges in automating a system that will tell you what CV to research. It's really hard to think about why a CV should be a good CV to put in your product or to give to your research team, and why it may be a waste of time. We won't go into any part of the to every factor of the choice, because it can fill up a whole presentation by itself. But there are plenty of stuff like how harmful the CVE can be, what services it might affect. Can it cause a denial of service because maybe we don't want to try dangerous stuff on our clients? Is there a public POC available? Because if someone wrote a POC, a proof of concept on GitHub, it can really help a researcher understand how to use the CVE, and we can bring it to market extremely fast. So basically, what interested us is a vulnerability attractive to an external hacker that can see the CVE and say, yeah, I want to use it. I want to exploit it and use it to attack a lot of servers. So what we do in this situation, we start small. We don't want to solve all of our problems at once. We started by creating a small proof of concept script, just something that even writes data to an Excel file. We started out by gathering data sources online that can help us, and gathering really basic data from the NIST NVD data set and the Red Hat database, stuff like the CVE number, the name, the score. I wrote here the importance of generic code from the start, and that's true for everything that you write, because you never know when your script is going to turn into a system, or when you will want to put new features in the future for your system. So it was really important to me to write everything generic, because I knew I will always find new databases in the future and new data sources that I want to put in the product. So after the starting small step of writing the script, you end up with an Excel file, with a CSV file, with just the basic data, and you see that you can start roaming the world of the CVs, and you can get all of the data and start to see what you can see. Maybe you'll find interesting stuff. So in this point, you want to go bigger. You want to find the actual real data that can help you prioritize the CVs, because what you have right now is not that interesting. So it begins to take shape. It begins to take shape when you have an actual database instead of using Excel. You can start adding the advanced data sources based on what will really interest you if you were to search for the CVE yourself. Stuff like, can you find a public POC? You can create a plugin for your script. You can create a piece of code that searches on GitHub for that CVE. Maybe someone created a POC online that the researcher can see and understand how to write an automated attack for that CVE. Is the CVE actually interesting? Is it hyped? We can look on Google. We can look on Twitter. We can use a lot of the tools that Shai showed on the last presentation, actually, because a lot of them are what actual hackers use to determine what CVE and what stuff they want to exploit. And there's no reason that an automated script can't do it for us. So is there a vulnerable version common in the world? We can check on Shodan, on Zumai, a lot of other sites as well, because we want to see how common the products are, the vulnerable products are, because if they are vulnerable, we might get clients soon that will have the vulnerable versions for them. And the most important stuff for us, because we want to defend our clients, is do we have clients with vulnerable machines right now? I integrated with our databases, and because I know what our clients have that can be seen from the outside, because we attack them from the outside as well, I'll know what an attacker can see from the outside, and that's how I'll know what will be interesting to him. So there are plenty of more data sources and stuff that we can automate to see if a CV is interesting. And everything can go into a prioritization script, such as this one. So what do we do when we have a lot of data? We can look into the data and see how we can actually prioritize the CVs themselves. We can create a scoring system. We started out with each component having its own weight. So what does that mean? Let's say we want to find CVs that we can implement quickly. That means we'll give a lot of weight for a CVE that has a public POC available. Let's say we want to find a POC for IoT devices. We'll give a lot of weight for stuff that is for IoT devices. So we can create a formula for calculating the score after we give a weight to each component. And that's all heavily based on trial and error, because there is no one formula to win all, to give you all the best CVE. You have to tweak around with the weights, with the scores, and see what gives you the best results for your use case. So the scoring system, as you can see, Midjourney, that's what I think the CVE looks like. Probably makes sense. But the main goal for us was to find the CVEs that are most critical for our clients. That means we need to think like the attacker that would attack our clients. Clients' assets that are visible from the internet. That's the most interesting thing for us, because that's what an attacker sees, the external attack surface. So we gave the most points to something that is visible from the outside and can be attacked from the outside. We gave a lot of points for stuff that have public POCs, because it doesn't only make it easy for us to implement, it makes it easy for attackers to implement an attack with that CVE. We gave a lot of points for stuff that can achieve code execution. I'm sure I don't have to explain why. That's the trophy for every hacker out there. And we can customize every scoring solution. So like I said, there is no one formula to win all. There is no one formula to give you the most interesting CVE to research, because there can be loads of different cases. As I said, you can be interested in IoT devices and Linux devices and Windows and maybe Apache servers. So everything can be customized to what your team needs, what your company needs, and it will make the process a lot easier. So after we have before we have the scoring system results, let's think about how a hacker can use an automated system like this. A hacker can find the easiest vulnerabilities to exploit whenever he can automatically see all of the POCs out there, and he can automatically see how those POCs affect real computers online. He can see what's the easiest to exploit, and he can identify vulnerabilities immediately when they rise up. So whenever a vulnerability gets publicly registered to the NIST database, it will automatically show up in an automated system that prioritizes the CVE. So that can give a huge advantage to a hacker. The hacker can also automate actual attacks. So we need to be careful. We don't want to run untested code on a client. We want the clients to be safe, and we don't want to cause harm to their servers, but an attacker doesn't care. An attacker can spray and pray with POCs he found on GitHub and on the darknet and on whatever tools he may find, because he just wants quick wins. So a hacker can use a system like this extremely easily, and with just spraying everywhere, he can find pretty quick results. So in this stage, let's go back to our script. We have a lot of data in our database. We gathered data about all of the CVEs in the world, and we've queried GitHub, and we looked at Google and Shodan, and we looked at a lot of different data sources. And now we want to look at the actual data. We want to see the result. So we turned our script into an actual system with an interface, and with all of the data in the database, we just need to query it. So we found a very nice open source system called Redash. Some of you might know it. If a lot of you don't know it, I really recommend it if you need a server with a nice UI to query and to have dashboards of queries for your data. It's an open source server this is an example visualization of what it can look like. It can really help you display all of the data for your program extremely easily. And immediately when we put the results onto Redash, when we queried it with Redash, we saw really promising results. With just a basic scoring system, we found a lot of relevant CVEs to what we wanted that we could start researching right away. And we started researching right away even. the information and the graphs that we saw were really accessible, but even they gave us a lot of hope, because as you can see, this is the graph that we immediately got from the basic scoring system. And it was really promising because it shows like a really nice 80-20 rule that you'll get 80% of your successes from 20% of your CVs. So there's a big spike in the scores of the CVs, as you can see, and a lot of CVs that the program thinks are not interesting. So that was extremely promising, because we saw that we can put a lot of efforts on a small amount of CVs and maybe get our wins from there. So the results, as they come in the table form, were also quite promising, because we could see the CVEs, the score they got, and the link to the quick POC that the researcher can look to see how the CV looks like in the real world. And one CV in particular was really interesting, because we started researching it immediately. It was not in our backlog. We didn't know about it previously to this project. It was CV 2021-4438. It's a CV, it's a vulnerability in Apache HTTP server with versions 2.4.48 and earlier. In the module mod proxy, it can cause you to forward requests to arbitrary servers in the network. And so we researched it, we created an automated attack for it. And actually, a week ago, we found actual results from it on a client's account. So the system managed to automatically attack a client that was vulnerable to DCV and managed to forward the request to an arbitrary server in the network. That was extremely exciting, because it shows a lot of potential. The system just started working, and the first CVEs that we got, that we researched, already gave us results. So that's a really, really, really big check toward automation, and we got really excited, and we think there's a big way for the system to go. So just to summarize the first part, we saw the immediate success with the CVE. It is now used by the product team to always be ahead and see the new CVs and see what we should prioritize in research. And the scoring system can still be tweaked, even for us, to see maybe different teams will want different CVs to come out on top. So we can still tweak it and see what we have to work with. So what else can we do? Because this prioritizing system is not just for CV. It's a generic architecture for prioritizing. We can use it for whatever we want. So we thought about the idea of using it for static code analysis. So what is static code analysis? It's the process of inspecting a source code without actually executing it. And you can identify possible vulnerabilities in the source code just by detecting known patterns. So known patterns that can possibly lead to problems like SQL injections and XSS and buffer overflow. So you can run a program that analyzes the code statically and gives you a result of possible vulnerabilities in that code. So we decided to create an OSP prioritization. That's our word for open source projects. So basically, we can identify what open source projects are common and used by our clients, and we can automatically run code analysis scans on them. So this is happening in the background. Code analysis scans can be quite long. So we don't care, we're just filling up a database in the background with all kinds of projects and all kinds of results. And we'll prioritize the results based on how many clients we have that are using these projects and how many results we got for a certain project. And we'll see what's good for additional research, okay? Because what we want is to save time for our researchers. And these were the first results that we saw for the OSP prioritizer. And they were also really promising because we had a lot of big players like libUSB, libYAML that got a big score because they were used by a lot of clients and had a lot of potential for vulnerabilities. But I'll show you a certain one called ProFTPD. It was a FTP server project that was used by some of our clients and was maybe vulnerable. It had 40 different static code analysis queries that say, this code might be vulnerable in some use cases in here. So let me show you how a cybersecurity researcher can see the result in the system, in the very basic system. You will see 2 lines. Let's take, for example, a memory never freed query, static analysis query. And he can see that in the project ProFTPD, there is a call to malloc. And if we'll just click it, it can immediately jump to the GitHub page and have the malloc line marked for him. And that's an extremely fast way for a researcher to not only exactly see where a problem might be, he knows that if there is a problem there, it can be very interesting because it was already prioritized for him. He knows it was for a certain client. He knows that if he'll find something there, it's not for nothing for our company. So the next steps for a process like this, I'm sure most of you were thinking about AI, obviously, because who doesn't think about AI now? And we can add AI to the system, of course, by even adding user input, like a product manager can search for, I want attacks on IoT devices that came out before 2012, stuff like that. But I don't think AI can fully replace the system as of now, because we have a lot of stuff that are specially tailored for our databases and for sources online and stuff that cannot immediately be replaced by AI. The second thing is automated POC testing. We want to get to a state where we can automatically run POCs that we found online. Of course, not on clients, but find a safe way to do it. And then we can give a report to a researcher that says, here you go, this is a CVE that can be executed just like this. This worked on a client replica or something. And we'll give him the exact steps for what he needs to implement a CVE, a vulnerability. That's extremely time-saving and money-saving for a company. And we are planning to keep using the project, keep using it to prioritize CVEs that come up next in the world, and of course always add new data sources. So for example, we have Shodan, but we don't have Zuma yet, so we will use it, and tons of other tools like that. So just to summarize how a hacker can use a system like this, or not even like this. Hacker can do what we did automatically, and without avoiding the denial of service attacks. They don't care what will happen to a system. They can automatically attack everything they see out there, and they don't even have to look at a bit of code to do it. They can take code that's already made. They probably are doing it right now. We always need to be ahead of them. Hackers only need one CV to work to get their success. We need to know all of the CVs. We need to defend from all of the CVs to have our success. So as Pentera, we want to validate all of the attacks as a hacker can. So the only way we can do it is with automation. That's the way I see it. And I think my advice to you is whatever process you have like this, it's hard for me to think of a process that won't get an advantage, a big advantage by automation. So you can always do as we did. You can always start small. You can always go bigger, one step at a time, even if it's a big thing like prioritizing CVEs. And you will probably get a big advantage even right from the start. So thank you very much for listening. I'm open to questions if you have any. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuval. You mentioned before that nowadays everyone think about ChatGPT. Well, I don't know. For a second I thought about dinner. So for me, it was one moment when I didn't think about ChatGPT. There are a couple of questions, but before all of those questions, as mentioned before, we are writing. I'm writing down to everyone now in the chat. There is a link to basically go to Pentera Labs and register to a newsletter and write the current research, the one that Yuval mentioned before, and a few others. So feel free to use them. Okay, so we'll start with Or asked Yuval, don't you compromise your clients previously using Redash Online? Maybe you use an on-prem instance?
So of course, we don't search for anything related to any of our clients on Redash. The Redash can show you, well, platforms, servers, IPs that are vulnerable to a CVE. Redash can, oh, sorry about that. I was talking about Shodan. Redash.io, I was thinking about something else. Redash is an open source system. Okay, now I'll answer the actual question. This is an open source system that we've installed on-prem. Yeah, you can use Redash.io. We have not used Redash.io. We are using an on-prem system to not compromise any of our clients' data. Yeah.
Excellent. There is another question from Kumar. Not sure if it was for you or for Shai, because you just wrote it in the between the slide, the presentation. So he's asking, is there opening for freshers? And again, either way, I mean, Pentera, I mean, you can answer from Pentera side, and Shai, if you also have on your side opening for jobs.
Well, not sure I can answer about question about jobs. I can tell you we have a careers page, careers at .pentera.io. Of course, you can check there. Hopefully,
so put it later on in the chat for everyone. Excellent. Shai, from your side?
From my end, I'm always using freelancer. That's my model. I do hire from time to time full-time position, but most of the people I work with are freelancers. And I'm open for business. If there's any talented people out there, just ping me.
Also juniors?
Juniors is less my thing. I don't have the time or capacity to train them unless I'm actually actively searching for a full-time employee, which is not the case.
So Kumar, hopefully that answered your question. And Shai, if you're already here, there was a question that was sent to you before, and again, I thought it would wait for it to visit for the end of the session. As a developer, how can I test the human components for vulnerability? Interesting.
The question is vague, but I'll try and answer as best I can. Okay, so if by human component you mean phishing elements and all that, it depends on the scope. If you're talking about specific, maybe the guy that answered that or the girl that answered that can prefer to elaborate. What do you mean by the human component of vulnerability? The human specific mistake, the human sensitive data presented? Maybe you can further elaborate.
Not sure, but again, the guided questions, feel free to add in the Q&A or in the chat. That would be interesting because it's an interesting concept of, what is the human component that you are using in a vulnerability.
You can, if you're talking about what the methodology that I presented, I can give a good example. So one of the search tokens that we found got us to a person's blog. And in the blog, the person had a link to his own personal GitHub repository. And in the GitHub repository that he had fragments of the code of the system, included a default admin credential. And the admin credential worked in the production system. So, that's a human element to you, like somebody disclosed, something about himself, okay? And that led us to the elements. But
okay, so Daniel is asking, the component is in terms of elements like CI/CD included in the build process. Okay, so the process, the CI/CD process.
Okay, so in terms of the human element, the system often has developers, okay? One of the search tokens you can find are entities associated with the system or its developers. For example, the email which is registered in the certificate, okay? Which is one entity associated with the system, but it's not the only one. You can also search the HTML content that is indexed in these various repositories, and even in Burp Suite. Burp Suite probably the best for this task. You can search for email patterns of the relevant domains that you identified. So let's say the organization name was bank.com. So you can do a search for emails of bank.com in Burp. Once you find entities like emails, humans, you can go and try to convert those emails either directly to access to their blogs, GitHub repositories, etc., or you can try and change the convention to fit something like LinkedIn. So if you can convert an email to our person would typically call his LinkedIn account, okay? Once you have either direct email search or conversion, you can find things like blogs and GitHub repositories. For example, if you run the email in GitHub, you'll get to code that the same person wrote, and even to his personal account, if he has the behavior of assigning a signature which is with his email to his code elements, okay? And then you can find elements which are relevant to the system or his behavior patterns and all that. Same thing for Google search with the email. Sometimes you'll get to the person blog, okay?
Okay, that's good. Okay, Yuval, another question for you, but that question is going to be raised for the next lecture. Any idea how Rotem financed is, I mean, or what he used to do for a living before Cider? It wasn't escape rooms.
I'll be happy to
So
know.
Rotem took his wife and his little daughter and did a bug bounty and pen test when he was in the East to finance eventually their trip. And if you ever want to hack Rotem systems, you should definitely check out something related to his wife and the rollerblades. So Rotem, tell us a bit about that one. I mean, you met your wife in a rollerblades team in Tel Aviv. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, there's a rollerblades team called the Tel Aviv Rollerblades, TAR. Every Tuesday, they meet at the Bima, and you can go at 10 p.m. from 10 to about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something like that. We just go over rollerblading all over Tel Aviv, Gush Dan. And
so again, if you are looking for spouses in your life, start rollerblading in Tel Aviv. That's basically the message here, I think. So without further ado, again, if you're not familiar with Rotem Bar, or if you ever heard the name, but the sound sounds, his voice sounds a bit different, it's not the Rotem Bar that you're thinking about. So there is one Rotem Bar in the Israeli ecosystem. He's ending OT. I think it is working for BDO, and he has a really, really nice podcast about information security. Our Rotem Bar is one of, I think you are either you are definitely or almost definitely one of the founding fathers of Cider. I mean, right? Almost from the beginning.
Yeah, I came, I think, when Guy left AppsFlyer, I was working with Guy and AppsFlyer, and then when he left, I told him, I'm coming with you, and that's it.
Take me. Yeah, so again, he's really from the beginning. He was one of the guys in the Cider team that was acquired not so recently anymore by Palo Alto. Again, because Rotem did bug bounty for a living, he's definitely going to share some information about bug bounty, things that you didn't even think about. So Rotem, the control is yours.
Thanks. So first of all, I'm Rotem. Yeah, every time I go to a security conference in Israel, there's always a mix-up between which Rotem Bar and Gidi say it's always funny. Sometimes I get his tag, he gets my tag, but it's very confusing for the people. But except that, I'm in security from like 20 years now, from the IDF. I did also InfoSec and pen test and network security, stuff like that. Went to do pen testing and red teaming all over the world. Worked with production plants and vehicle production plants, vehicle security, stuff like that. Did hardware, and along all the time over there, I was very fascinated by VDP, like telling companies what their problem is. VDP is vulnerable disclosure programs, and like in the last 10 years, I think bug bounty started becoming. Actually, my first bug I reported to was to Google. I found a cross-site scripting in Gmail. I tried to report to them, and I wasn't even able to contact them at first. I got no bounty, no nothing, but it was funny. Actually, I got my name on the Hall of Fame, and now currently it's already so old it's not even there anymore. At Palo Alto, I do AppSec innovation, and that's me. I hunt for bugs most of the time in different areas and different hats in my life. Let's see if I can go forward. Yeah. So I want to talk about like why hackers do bug hunting. I did a lot of pen testing and red teaming and stuff like that, and also looking and doing bug hunting. And it's a bit different in the vibes and a bit different in how to approach it. And I want to talk about different changes in the mindset and everything, and why do people do bug bounty. The next thing is, of course, why should companies do bug hunting? Because why should companies use bug bounty and not use only Shaychen or other like pen test companies and SDLC and all of the stuff over there. I will talk again about bug bounty hunters, and then we will have a summary about everything. You can ask me whatever you want. So why do hackers hunt? And this is the first answer: money. But also in pen test,
That's it. Presentation ends.
Yeah. Also pen test does money, and security assessments. You can get a lot of money from us over there, but there's a change in pen test and then red teaming and whatever. You have a job, you will get paid whatever, even if you are not good at it, or even if you're good at it. The bonus compensation usually is very small, and it's a fixed price, it's a fixed payment, and it's usually good for most people in the world, because most people want to know they have their job. Doesn't matter if they're good or not, they will be able to survive at the end of the month. A bug hunter that does it 100% of the time, it doesn't have this feeling. And this feeling is a bit like, it's a problem if you don't, like, if you're not good, if you start having imposter syndrome, you need to always be in the chase and be the best in what you do. And not all people are good at it. The thing that as a bug hunter, the more you hack, the more money you will receive. So you can hack 24/7, not eat, maybe eat a bit, and then you will get a lot of money if you're good, of course. The other areas is when I pen test, I have a bug that I find. Let's say I find even a bug that is like half a 0 day or something that is interesting. And if I can exploit the system, it's good for me. And as a pen test, it's okay. I don't get any added value. As a bug hunter, I can take this bug and go to all my other targets and start playing with them and know, okay, if this method or this tactic worked in one place, maybe it will work in other places. And I can multiply myself. And then the next thing is, I want to go play with my kids. I want to go do stuff. I don't have a boss of my own. I can automate myself. Like, I will get the money if I automate it. And this will just be a machine that creates money. So this is a good area why hackers or bug bounty do this. The other area that I started more from this area and not from the money, because I do have a full-time job and I'm okay. the collaboration, when I pen test or when I work on a system, usually I work alone or with another person that I am teamed with. And when I do bug hunting, I can choose whoever I want from the thousands of people that are doing bug hunting in the world. I can share tactics, I can talk with them, we can collaborate much better without the barriers of the corporate systems and the companies telling me, no, this is a secret of the company, you cannot share this, or I don't even know if I can share it or not. I can help other people. Maybe they pay me with bounty tips, maybe not. Sometimes we split, sometimes not. It doesn't matter. I also, when I have a question from the community, I can ask them. And this is a very important aspect of the whole bug bounty community. It's a good community. Lots of people are very passionate, want to help each other. And it's a good way even for people that are just coming into the industry and are not experts to start playing with, and they get the boost to get in and then maybe continue or to a proper security field, pen test or red team or whatever, or to go continue full-time bug bounty, or do both. And together, like, usually I feel that when I work with a team, I'm better myself because I want to work with them. I feel like they help me, I help them, and together we push our limits. Questions I can answer. I'll answer them at the end.
By the end.
Yeah, a bit of a challenge, and challenge is actually very interesting because as a pen test, I did pen test and I was very good. You can ask Shai. We worked together a bit, but when I started bug bounty, I didn't find nothing. And it was very challenging and very frustrating even to understand why, like, why is this happening? And in pen test or in bug bounty, this is not a CTF. This is not something that there will be a problem that you can solve or find a bug or find what someone else. Maybe there's nothing. And this is a mind game that you play with yourself. You don't know when to stop or what is the limit. Where should you focus on? The other thing is you're hacking usually on very secure systems. Tens or hundreds or thousands of people, pen test red teams already looked at these systems and they played with them. And this is very challenging. And like I like the challenge. And I know lots of bug bounty hunters do like this challenge and want to go, and because of this are doing these challenges and not a CTF or not a regular pen test that you get from a bank that already all the results from before. And then you also have you have time to find a new 0 day. You don't have, if you do have the time and you don't have this time limits and stuff, you can just dig in until you find a 0 day and then just go multiply it and find it everywhere. So the challenge is good. You can be a hero, and this is you can go and really affect not one company or not one area. You can go and make the world a safer place. You can go and fix stuff wherever you go. Everywhere I go to, my wife actually told me, like, one time we were in the hospital, I saw the computer in the hospital, I wanted to hack. She said, no, don't hack into them. But I want, like, I see stuff and I want to protect them. I want to make them better. You can help humanity in general. I don't know if bug bounty security helps humanity or makes it worse, but at the end, because this is public information and it's always like mostly public, you can get recognition for it. When I hacked into Gmail, I got recognition, and I got on the Google website, they say Rotem helped them. And this is very good for yourself, good for your CV, good for your story. And the more companies even before we got into Palo Alto networks, I hacked into Palo Alto networks and they gave me recognition. So it's always it's good. It feels good that people recognize you, and you can just like have this aura around you. And this is the different types of people, hackers, that I understand. But then if you look, like if I go and summarize and I compare to pen test, the compensation in pen test is fixed, it's promised, but it's capped. It's always capped. It's always like, and the companies always lowball you all the time. They don't have budgets to pay the proper budgets, so it's always a game of how low can you go, or like how do you play the game. In bug hunting, it's based on impact. It doesn't matter if you find SQL injection. It matters where you found it, and this is the main difference between the two. If you find it in a system that nobody cares about, they will pay you nothing, maybe a bit, $50. But if you find it in a system that has access to everything, they can pay you even 10K or even more. And it can go endless if you play with the multipliers. The challenge in bug hunting, there's no trivial issues. You have constant competition. You always have the imposter syndrome, and you will almost always be black box. And in pen test, and this is actually one thing that is very good in pen test, and this is why I love pen test. Today, when I go and hack as pen test, I ask for the source code because I can, and the company can give me it. And if they give me the source code, I can find much more faster vulnerabilities. And in bug hunting, almost never they will almost never give me source code. You can steal it, but it's a different game. And then also you have the first eyes.
Then you'll become hero for other reasons.
Yeah. In pen test, you are the first person that sees this system, so of course you will have much more issues, and this is okay. This is part of the game. So if you want the more issues, and you can be more junior style, and like go and find and go off the source code and really help the company, it's good value. And then in the bug hunting, everything that everybody missed. From the coverage area, in bug hunting, it's statistical. You don't know how much coverage you have. In pen test, it's time-based. You know as much as you gave time for it. If you gave 100 hours, you will get 100 hours of pen test without the driving to the company, and so work from home. And
that's important, by the way, from the other side. So when you do pen tests for your own system, when you order a pen test as a CISO, you should know that the other side, again, no one works for free. Shai, correct us if we are wrong. Eventually, if the company estimated it in, I don't know, 200 hours, they will eventually, provide you with a proposal for 200 hours-ish. I mean, it's a fixed price. If eventually it will cost 400 hours, obviously no one will actually do it, so no one will actually cover it fully. On the other side, for bug bounty, basically, someone can try to hack you over and over and over again because they are looking for that holy grail, the one time that will pay it all.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to consider.
Yeah. And then if you go to collaboration, like bug hunting, you can collaborate with everybody you want, or everybody that is invited to the private play program. But in pen test, it's inside the company. You're usually stuck with the person that was available at the same time for this project. You can sometimes plan it, but mostly it's you against the world with resources from the company itself. So if I looked at the bug bounty and the bug hunters, now the company itself, and there's a big question is, do we need pen test or do we need bug bounty? And I'm talking about like a 101 of a company. Just you have app developers, you have DevOps, you have IT, you have BI, you have other people, and all of these fabulous people. You have also AI agents now, and all of these people are 24/7 pushing stuff into your production environments. They are pushing code, they are pushing configuration, they are pushing servers, the cloud assets, apps, applications, they're developing features. They're doing lots of work always just to make the company work. And we want to add security to this area. So we will eventually, and this is part of the whole security lifecycle, we will add pull request scanning, we will add IDE scanning to the developers. We have peer reviews to review each other's code. We have app scanning and infrastructure scanning and cloud scanning, CSPM and CVE, like Yuval mentioned over here. And we do CI/CD scanning, part of Cider and Palo Alto that we did. And then you have this yearly, quarterly plans for code review, and then you can get from Shai or other companies code review, configuration audits, app pen tests, info pen tests, and this is everything that you need to do to have a basic understanding of security. And the question is this enough? And I'm going to talk about like the low points over here. So from pull request scanning, you have pull request scanning, but a developer decided he wanted to just now use a language called, I don't know, brainfuck or whatever, like a language that he wants, and security isn't supporting it, but he wants it and he needs it, and this is what he's using. But then also, even if he's using a JavaScript language and he's using a library that isn't known, or just that is a niche library that nobody supports it, then we need apps customization. So it's always a game of security to go and customize this stuff. Also, ID scanning. I, as a developer, it costs me 2% CPU. It gets my fan and my computer to start running. I just disable the ID scanning. It's not worth it. Maybe some developers disable it, some don't. You don't even know as security if someone disabled it. You have peer review. That's good, and usually most of the developers will help each other in how much performance or how does the code look and how will it be readable. Not much developers look at, this is a security bug, fix this. Some do, but most no. App scanning, you have crawlers that get stuck because there's a JavaScript redirect or some other JavaScript magic that someone put in. IDLE and Bola is not supported usually in app scanning, and you have much problems over there. Then you have infrastructure scanning. It's payloads. If you don't have the payloads, and the company, as much as I love companies and hackers are doing it much faster, you can look at Nuclei. It's from Project Discovery. They have the amount of configuration scanning over there that they're building is like so faster than any company I've seen, and it's all community based. You have cloud scanning. You always have so much assets in the company that is going up and down that it's hard. And then CV scanning, we talked about prioritization with Yuval, and false positives and false negatives, too much results, no one is validating properly. You don't know if a package, what source code it has inside, and you have so much like stuff that we can do better over here. You have CI/CD scanning. It's cool. It's a new area. It's a bit early in maturity, also from customers to understand what's the impact. And also, so just now the attackers just create a pull request in GitHub and steal all your environments, and you can do it for any company in the world almost. And then the most interesting stuff over here for the code review and the app pen test and info pen test, you do this audit and you do it quarterly or yearly or whatever, but you don't give him access to the code and you don't give him access to resources, because you want to pass SOC 2, because you want to pass the compliance. So you want to give him the full, and to say you give him everything that he needs, but you actually hope that he will find nothing that you cannot handle and fix easily. And this is a game that from security and compliance, it's a bit two-edged sword, or like you don't know which side you want to be over here. So in reality, there's a lot of areas that still pass through the filters of security, and then bug bounty comes in, and you have all of these different types of hackers. If they come from for the money, or for collaboration, or for giving your name inside your website, their name inside your website, or just for the challenge because it's fun to hack TikTok. It's different ways and different ideas. And then they will go and do all the recon and scanning and the subdomain enumeration and looking at everything over there. They will do manual testing. Sometimes for a pen test has this 100 hour limit, but the bug hunter doesn't have this limit. He can go and think about it and go even next week or in 2 weeks. So even one day you in the shower, just pop up, think of something, and will go to the deepest and craziest areas that nobody went, just because he's thinking about your systems all the time. There's new tactics. Dependency confusion was born in bug bounty by Alex Birson. You have the community, they share with each other, with the world, and this is part of the game of what bug bounty do. I'm going to a live hacking event next month. You meet lots of other people, you learn from them, you team up. It's like part of a game. I think like one more thing is like I wanted to say, like when I was in AppsFlyer, actually we had a bug bounty program, and one thing is the game from the company is to be able to focus the bug hunters to your program, because they will go whoever pays more money, whoever has better scopes, like wildcard scopes, they will go to areas that interest them, that they can monetize, because some of them are living on this, and if they don't have good monetization from you, they will continue to somewhere else. And also, if you try to screw them up, if the weak programs that are not mature enough, if you have many problems and they have lots of duplicates, then they will feel like, oh, you're just not taking them serious, and they will leave the program. And when they leave the program, they tell all the community, their friends inside the small forums, that this program is not fun, is not giving, is not paying, and they will just leave it. So it's part of the game is to be good with them, help them, give them bonuses, because they also have a lot of companies, and each day they have more and more companies to work for. And I hopefully in the future, every single company in the world will have a bug bounty program, and then you can choose wherever you want to hack. Currently, I have lots of, like, I scanned a few assets that I found, and I see there's no bug bounty program, and then it's a problem, because I don't have enough time to go and submit to all of these different companies and start convincing them this is a problem. If they pay, then I can do ROI for this time. But if not, then there's lots of customers that have huge holes. There's other human beings that know about these holes, and they're doing nothing because they don't have a bug bounty program. So the big question is, do you have an immune system inside your company? That's it, I think.
Excellent. So thanks a lot, first of all. There are a couple of questions that have been raised. Before continuing again, right now on the slide, you see the link and the QR code to join our community on LinkedIn, and later on you will see the recordings there, as well as the slides. So there are 6 questions. Okay, let's start with Daniel. Daniel asks, I noticed that some systems don't handle special characters like apostrophe. Is this catered for in some of the systems used for pen testing? Maybe that's one also is for Yuval and Chai. But again,
Yeah,
feel
I
free.
think
It's
it's
one of those.
usually because of SQL injection. Usually, if there's instead of just handling SQL properly and doing it with parameterized queries, some companies go and just remove the special characters like apostrophe, and then think they are safe from SQL injection. And then the way it's not only from strings, sometimes it's by a number, like or order by or something, and then over there you get the SQL injection, you can have fun with the system. So
Even if they do solve it, I guess there's a whole category, if you want to Google it, of evasion techniques, which is generally the techniques used if they do block or unblock a specific characters. If you want something to read about, you can go to OSP cheat sheets. That's the resource you want to read about. I'll type it down for you. OSP cheat sheets. Just a sec.
There is another question about, by the way, platforms similar to. I mean, you mentioned some, Rotem, some bug bounty programs. I mean, the companies that or platforms that manage them for companies. So how can HackerOne and others can help organizations avoid the weakness described in bug bounty programs?
how can HackerOne? I didn't understand. HackerOne and bug. There's
So
a few.
how can HackerOne or other, the competitors can help organizations, I mean, the customers, avoid the weakness described in the bug bounty program?
Yeah,
What you
first of
described
all,
before, basically, in the slides.
yeah. First of all, like the communities, HackerOne has a role. Or usually, they will help companies start easy and slowly with a bug bounty program. So they will load into a private mode. That is, they will select the hackers to hack on it in low traffic, and then once the company is mature enough and can handle more areas, they will start inviting more people, and then open publicly at the end. The other thing is that they have also triagers that help triage the initial findings, and then they help the company understand better what's the problem, because sometimes the attackers, and there's different type of bug hunters, sometimes they know how to find technically the problem, but they don't know how to explain it. They don't know how to proxy it to the company for the company to be able to use it properly and use it in a way that they can go and fix the problem. And this is the proxying that these platforms do.
Yes, and in addition to that, also those programs like HackerOne, they also do some kind of triage, not just for the findings, but also triage or filtering for the pen testers. So, for example, if you don't want to take a risk with a open bug bounty, they can actually vet the bug hunters for you. So you can actually, for example, I know that we used them in the past, and we actually asked for only specific members that we can actually choose by name, or by, in this case, nickname, obviously not the name, but they actually vetted them before we allowed them access to some of our more sensitive environments.
Yeah, there's
Refresh asks.
hacking events, and there's also I have, like, if you look in my HackerOne profile, I have a blue icon. It's a HackerOne Clear, it's called, and then they do background checks and more checks for the hackers themselves.
So that's another plus. Ori asks, considering bug bounty as a secondary income, is there competition in the field? Can you give estimates in rate per hour or something like this for people who are new or experienced in the bug bounty field? For example, the potential income or monthly.
It depends how much. If it's a secondary income and not full time, then it actually depends on how much you put in and what do you want to do. And it's like, if you focus. So let's say you have the more easy targets. Let's say AT&T, I don't know, or like other targets. There's targets that pay less and they are more easy. and you can get from a cross-site scripting $50 for a cross-site scripting. You have other targets that are much more mature, and already people went over them. It's very like in Gmail today, it's very hard to find a cross-site scripting. Gmail can pay you 10 to 20K per cross-site scripting in Gmail. So it depends.
But let's see if you can actually find.
Yeah. So if you go and find something and you know how to, like, lots of people also find niches like DOM-based cross-site scripting. It's a niche. Most pen test companies don't know how to find them. Some do. And then in this niche, you can have good money value ROI if you're good at it, or other like response building, or other more sophisticated, more technical, complicated attacks get you more value, because the more you go deeper, less people go into it.
So another question is, as a beginner bug, if you remember, we call it bug bounty as well when we prep for the panel. So bug bounty or bug hunter, that's the actual name. But as a beginner, can you share communities that can help with starting? So I think that any CTF platform can help you start, right, your journey. Play along with it a bit. I mean, try to understand.
And actually, in HackerOne, there's a CTF. There's also a bug crowd. There's lots of information over there, and you have just Twitter. You can go over Jason Haddox. There's a few people that just you can go and follow them. Jason Haddox and Katie, and I can find more. But also, we have a bug bounty community in Israel. I can share the link. We have a WhatsApp group, and we meet. We had Meetup in B-Sides, the last B-Sides, in TLV. You can ping me up.
That's another one. Yeah, so that's another one. The B-Sides, again, it just ended. So you'll need to wait for one more year for the next B-Sides, but the B-Sides. And for women, you also have the Akeriot.
Yeah.
Like there are really lots of communities. Just Google them and you'll find so many. But again, start from any type of CTF, play along with it, see that you actually like it first, and then start, moving along and to more mature communities. That's, I think, the best approach.
We can organize. We organize like meetups monthly or every 2 months of bug bounty meetups. Maybe Pentera want to host us next time, or somebody else. We can talk, and then you can just come and join our next meetup.
That's interesting. Well, Yuval and Daniel are here, so they can definitely take it internally and get back to us. That can be really, really cool. Is it realistic to earn money? Okay, so basically that's, I think, we already answered. But the question is it realistic to earn more money full-time bug bounty than pen testing? Do you need to be a unicorn for that? I assume that in anything, you need to be a unicorn when there is competition, but I think that the competition in bug bounty is not that hard. So there is still a lot to do, right?
Yeah, you
because
can
it's
earn
international.
full-time money. It depends on how much money you want to. If you live in Southeast Asia or in India and you want to get full-time bug bounty, you can do it. You can go to Thailand, go on the beach, do full-time bug bounty, have a good life. It's easy.
And you'll still have some savings aside.
Yeah. If you want to.
And again, the better you become, obviously you will make more money. So in a way, I wouldn't call it unicorn, but you definitely need to be good to do a lot of money. But as you mentioned, Rotem, before, even, AT&T, so any big American company that obviously has so much out there, so that you will find lots of things. That's why they pay not too much. But you will definitely be able to live from that. Again, not in the center of Tel Aviv, probably. But on the beach,
I can say I don't do full-time bug bounty. It's also less fun for me because I want to work with people. I want to work with a team. I want to work and in bug bounty, I know I didn't find someone else doing full-time bug bounty in Israel that I can just work with him all the time, and the people are across the whole globe. So there are people that like it and people that go to live hacking events, and I see like the next question is Dvir is asking, where can we see the live hacking event? I don't think you can. Like, I don't think that live hacking events are publicly seeable. There is media coverage about it. You can look at it. There's if you go to HackerOne and or to BugCrowd, I think HackerOne has a very good document about how they invite people to the live hacking events. You have like a ratio of 20% they're top hackers, 20% community based, another percent is by invitation from the company, and you just need to be active and be invited to one.
Again, as mentioned before, there are so many capabilities, so many options. I mean, start from again, if you want to start seeing things, start from any type of CTF. From time to time, they even have, they have something online that you can even learn how to. Then you can YouTube any challenge there and see how others solved it. So that will help you actually learn it. And eventually, I think it's from time to time they have some events, like online events of CTF. Usually, whenever they issue a new CTF competition challenge, and that's some kind of an online event or event that you can actually watch.
But
again,
I want to say that you need to ditch the CTF as fast as possible as you can.
No, of course, that's just as the first step.
You can learn from the CTFs, but at the end, you want to give yourself the knowledge and capability that you can find bugs that are not like known bugs. It's a game that someone directed you to them. You want to be able to give yourself the possibility that that you found this in your own, and this is only outside CTFs, regular bug bounties, even VDP places that nobody pays. It's good to play with because nobody wants to find, like, there are people that want to find some stuff, but nobody is searching actively too much because they don't pay money.
So that's basically it, guys. Again, any other question, you can feel free to contact each one of the panelists or us via the LinkedIn page. That you can still see the link and the QR code for it. In addition, may I remind you that earlier Lior put in the chat a link to a form where you can actually sign up, and then you will actually get an approval from us of attendance in this meetup. It will give you 2 hours of CPE if you are a member of IC Square or ISACA. I just put it again on the chat. So if you are into it, just write down your details, and we will send you an approval as a PDF to your email. And again, thanks a lot for Rotem, Yuval, and Chai. That was really, again, it made me wise, and I thought that I know quite a lot. So thank you very, very much. Enjoy the rest of the day and the week. And the records again will be uploaded to our LinkedIn community. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.